and all the excitement of getting ready to close on your new home, an often overlooked but very important aspect is your buyer's final walkthrough. Consider what happens after you close on the home. It's all yours. So let's talk about some ways to keep from making a mistake by performing a buyer's final walkthrough. My name is Andrew Finney, and my passion is helping you make sense of real estate. If you need help finding a top agent near you, or if you simply want to drop me a line to say hello, my contact info is below. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel now and like this video. Thank you. Let's face it, my friend, when you're getting ready to close on a home, you're in the hustle and bustle mode. Everything is starting to happen all at once. You're turning on the utilities, you're preparing to move. You got so much going on. The last thing on your mind is actually taking a look in detail of the buyer final walkthrough, as opposed to having that new home excitement. It's so natural to happen. So let's go over a few tips for you to get this right. Now, the first thing is you might be wondering, what is a buyer's final walkthrough? Even though a final walkthrough is not a home inspection or an appraisal, it is an inspection that occurs anywhere from a few hours before you close to a few days before you close, depending on how your offer was written. In short, the purpose of the buyer's final walkthrough is to ensure the property is in the same condition as when you made your offer, of course improved for any of the repairs that may have been negotiated with those repairs completed by the time you're getting ready to close. So that means not only should it be in the same condition, but any repairs that were agreed upon between you and the seller should also be done at this point. During the buyer's final walkthrough, we'll want to make sure nothing has gone wrong as you've been moving forward through the closing process. The second thing is the issue with vacant homes. A home being vacant is not a good thing. The longer a home is vacant, the more apt something is to break down. Consider the fact that if the toilets aren't being flushed, if water isn't running through the pipes, that given a long enough time in certain areas of the country, that little U shape at the bottom of that plumbing will dry out. If that dries out, you can get a horrific smell like sewer gas wafting through the house, and you can also get some roaches or other critters trying to come up through the plumbing. It's important to note that with a vacant home, either the listing agent or perhaps even your buyer agent should be going over to the house at least once a week to be turning on the water and flushing the toilets to make sure that everything stays on the up and up with the plumbing. But that's not the only thing that can fall into disrepair. So this is why it becomes critically important to ensure that everything is on track and everything is ready to go when you get ready to close. The last thing that you'd want to find out is that maybe there was a little bit of a drip. You know those annoying drips, but maybe for some reason it couldn't go down the drain and your house has flooded because it was left vacant and nobody was checking on it. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. To better illustrate this, let's talk about the third thing, which is what is it like to attend a buyer's final walkthrough and it's gone all wrong. Now, it's completely normal that buyers get so excited to come out with their tape measures and a pen pad getting ready to plot out where they're going to put their furniture, measuring on the wall, where they're going to hang a painting and everything. They get so caught up in the new home excitement, and it's completely natural. Now, if your real estate agent isn't walking through and checking everything, this is what could happen. In a real life example, let's say that the property had a sewer system on it, and you as the buyer were so excited looking at your new home and the complete awe and the radiance of your new place, your buyer agent was walking around turning on all the faucets, flushing all the toilets, turning on all the showers, turning on the HVAC, testing all the systems, only to find out whenever they flushed the toilet, the agent walked outside and was met with a horrific smell. What was it? The septic system had risen and it had overflowed. Even though it wasn't an issue at the time of the home inspection, it had gone wrong by the time of the final walkthrough. Fortunately, this happened a few days before closing, so the buyer agent was able to get in touch with the listing agent and the seller was able to make it right and have the system fixed before closing. That's an example of what it's like if you're a buyer and you're just doing you, right? You're getting so excited about your new place, but if that buyer agent had not been doing their job, then it would have been a massive issue that would have fell onto you as your responsibility to get fixed, and the first time you flushed your toilet, you would have known something was really wrong because it was smelling. That brings us to the fourth thing. What should you be checking during a buyer's final walkthrough? Let's take a closer look at a checklist that you can use right now. The first thing is to turn on and off every light fixture in the house. The second thing is to run the water on all faucets in all areas and let it run for a little bit so that you can open up the cabinets and check underneath to make sure there's no presence of any leaks and no signs of water dripping down. That's one of the last things you'll want to do when you're focused on moving into your new place. The third thing is to test all the appliances in the house. So if you have gas operated stoves and ovens, you want to turn them on, make sure all of them are lighting correctly and everything is working correctly. You want to turn your microwave on to maybe 3 seconds, push enter, and see if it's turning on. You want to hit the vent, especially if it's like one of those vented type microwaves that are the exhaust for the stove. You want to make sure that's working. Turn on the dishwasher, turn on the garbage disposal. If the washer and dryer was being left behind, please go ahead and check that as well by turning them on and then turning them off after you're satisfied they're operating correctly. And this will get even more interesting. With a refrigerator in specific, if the refrigerator is being left behind, you want to check to make sure the water is coming out of the water dispenser. True story, this has happened where it was working one day and it wasn't working the next. Let's make sure that it's working for when you move into your new home. The fourth thing is to make sure your garage opens and closes correctly. The fifth step is to open and close all the doors in a house to make sure that they're nice and easy, whether it's French doors, a sliding door, it's just a door to the front home. Make sure it works. The sixth thing is to flush the toilets. Remember our example a moment ago where the septic was a problem? It wouldn't have been discerned without flushing the toilet. So we want to make sure we're flushing those toilets to make sure there's no issues with the septic line. The seventh thing is to inspect the ceilings, walls, and floors. You want to make sure there's no more settling cracks or anything going on with your walls, your floors, and your ceilings than at the time that you made the offer and after any repairs were requested of the seller to make sure that it was done. It's extremely important to make sure that you check this. The eighth is to turn on the exhaust fans and make sure that they're functioning correctly, and your garbage disposals. Let it run for a couple of moments and make sure it's working okay. The ninth thing that you're really going to want to do is go over to your AC and turn it down and make sure there's cool air blowing out, and turn on the heating and make sure warm air is blowing out. Now, of course, you've had a home inspection. The appraisal has been done. And again, the purpose of this is what? Just to make sure that everything is still functioning correctly before you sign your name on the dotted line, making it your own. We want to make sure any repairs that need to be done are done. The 10th thing you want to take a look at are the windows. You want to open and close each of the windows if at all possible to ensure everything is on the up and up and they're operating correctly. The 11th thing that you want to check for is to make sure that any of the seller's belongings have been moved out. If there's a presence of any seller's belongings, you want to make sure it's going to be moved out or the seller's coming back to get it. It is important to note that there's a couple of different ways that our buyer walkthrough goes down. Sometimes it might be a few days in advance or even the same day, and the seller may still be there. If obviously there's some stuff in the house at that time, it's okay because they're in the process of moving out. Now, if the seller's already vacated and you see something left behind, that's when you want to ask them if they plan on taking it out so that you can make arrangements to get rid of it if you need to. And the 12th thing is one of my favorite things in the world is this Klein Tools RT105 outlet tester to check all the outlets and make sure that all the outlets are working. Now, of course, your home inspector would have done this too. Again, the purpose is simply to make sure that everything is working. In practice, whenever it comes time to do a buyer final walkthrough, I'll normally get there early and start checking all the outlets and turning everything on and going through everything because I know my buyers are going to be caught up in the enjoyment and satisfaction they're getting ready to close on their new home. To prevent them from having any issues in their new home, I do everything that I can by testing everything. Even though I'm not a home inspector, I simply do this so we can make a note on the buyer final walkthrough if something is not functioning correctly. Which brings us to the 5th point, and that's what if the seller is in the home at the time of the buyer walkthrough? Now, contrary to popular belief, this could be a really good thing, and here's why. Sellers would want to divulge a lot of information to you more than likely at the final walkthrough. They're feeling all kinds of excitement and euphoria because they're getting ready to close and move on to their next destination. They know you're super pumped up and excited because you made the offer on their house. They know you're going to love that house. So a good seller will actually want to have a conversation with you, share any additional tips or idiosyncrasies of the house with you to help you be the best homeowner you can be in your brand new place that's now your home. It's super cool. So when this happens in practice, I just let the seller and the buyer talk and I just keep going through and checking the systems. If there's any concerns, I go back to the buyer and seller and say, hey, I noticed that this faucet was leaking a little bit. Is that something you can get fixed before we close? Because I'm going to put it down on this report saying that, hey, leaky faucet, okay? We want to make sure that anything that was agreed upon to be repaired by the seller and the repair request you submitted early on in the closing process is done. If that was one of those items, it shouldn't be leaking. It should be fixed. At the same time, I find it absolutely a joy when sellers and buyers start talking because a lot of times a seller and buyer don't have the opportunity to meet each other in person, and in some cases, they even become really good friends after the fact. So why not keep an open mind at the buyer final walkthrough if the seller's there and simply lay back and let the seller share a lot of other information with you. Keep in mind that the buyer final walkthrough is not a time for final negotiations. It's not a time to try to go back and get something repaired after we've already submitted that request. It's just not going to happen. That contingency is now expired by this point, and the purpose is what? The buyer's final walkthrough is simply to make sure the home is in the same condition as of the time that you made an offer on the house house and perhaps a little bit more fixed up after negotiating the repairs on your new home. It's not the time to get into last minute negotiations. Just being real with you, just being honest with you. So please make sure that you take it serious, but also understand what the purpose of the final walkthrough is. Okay, my friends, so now that you know more about a buyer final walkthrough, let's take a closer look at a buyer final walkthrough that I actually recorded doing it live in a real house to better help you out. Then let's take a look at 19 tips to help you save some money. Looking forward to our next conversation. We'll see you in a few.